Good morning, Stella.
Hi, Patrick. Good morning. This whole month, I've been hearing commercials about Father Rocky telling us to pray the rosary to end abortion, all that good stuff. And I'm a labor and delivery nurse, and for some reason, this month, I've never had preteen patients, but just this month, like the first 2 weeks, I've had a 13-year-old and a 14-year-old patient. And so it got me thinking, I know that the Catholic Church is against abortion, but I was wondering if there's any exceptions to that abortion rule. One of them was a sex trafficking victim, and the other one was not. But I'm wondering, and also for medical issues too, sometimes there are pregnancy complications where delivery or termination is the only cure for the mom, or else the mom could die or have a stroke, seizure, or whatever. But worst case scenario, death is sometimes a pregnancy complication. So I was wondering if there's any exceptions to the no abortion rule.
Well, let's start there. Because life begins at conception, abortion is always wrong under any circumstances because it's the intentional killing of a human life, an innocent human life. And we all recognize that. We don't torture people. We seek not to inflict cruel and unusual punishment upon them, and that's good. And to kill the person is even worse. So let's consider the case of a young girl who gets pregnant, say through rape or sex trafficking, which is essentially the same thing. What happens is, as you know, and I realize I'm not instructing you on something that you don't already know, but let's just walk through this together and consider the details here. In that instance, a man has dehumanized this girl, turned her into an object, and has used her and exploited her. And very often, violence is part of that. And so we rightly deplore that. It's a heinous, terrible thing for a man to do, to any woman, much less to a child. So we recognize and condemn this hateful, diabolical behavior, and rightly so, because he has dehumanized this girl and he has used her to get something he wants. Well, if she gets pregnant from this, what happens with an abortion is that the rapist's violence, the circle, you might say, is completed. Because now we have a second innocent person, the unborn child, who is also dehumanized, who is also victimized, and against whom violence is used to get something, which is, in this case, obviously freedom from having to have a child, and everyone understands why it is a terrible situation, but it actually completes the circle of violence. It extends the circle of violence, and it's doing, in a different way, ultimately the same thing to another innocent person. And so the church says, no, we can never do that. And as terrible as the circumstance is, it's not made better. It's actually made far worse by killing this unborn child. And it also saddles this girl with a lifetime of sadness and other problems that will arise from this in due time as a result of the abortion. So that's the church's clear teaching on this issue. And I offer you that just so you can ponder it as you go about the work that you're doing. Now, let's take the second issue. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not being a physician. I don't have any standing to talk about this, but we do have some audio from a doctor who was an abortion doctor for many years. He's an OBGYN. His name is Dr. Anthony Levatino. And so he's a board-certified obstetric physician. And before he had his conversion, he had aborted thousands and thousands of babies. So he's an expert on this topic, and he was giving some testimony on the question of, well, what about when the mother's life is in danger? And here was his expert medical testimony. Take a listen to this.
We hear all the time how abortion, including especially late-term abortion, is necessary to save women's lives. Nothing could be further from the truth. I spent 9 years working at a tertiary medical center. I mean, there are only certain hospitals in the country that are designated to take care of the really, really high-risk pregnancies. You don't want to duplicate the effort. It's expensive. So these hospitals get referrals from the surrounding area. And Albany Medical Center in Albany, New York, where I worked, was one of them. I was faculty at the hospital for 9 years. And I saw hundreds of cases of really severe pregnancy complications, cancers, heart disease, intractable diabetes out of control, toxemia of pregnancy out of control. And I saved, in those 9 years, I saved hundreds of women from life-threatening pregnancies. And I did that by delivering them, by ending their pregnancy by delivery, either induction of labor or cesarean section.
Delivering the baby.
Delivering the baby. And I always tell people, in all of those years, the number of babies that I was obligated to deliberately kill in the process was zero, none. And I'll give you an example. The key point about late-term abortion that so many people miss is that it takes days to prepare the cervix. This is not a natural situation by any stretch. If you're going to dilate a cervix sufficiently, that starts off essentially as a pinpoint, large enough to dismember or tear apart a baby this big, that cervix has to be dilated, and that can take anywhere from 24 to 72 hours. And especially when you're talking about later term pregnancies. Most life-threatening situations, the vast, vast majority of life-threatening situations in pregnancy are not going to arise until 24, 25, 26 weeks of pregnancy and higher. And when you're talking about that, you're talking about abortion procedures that take 2 and 3 days to prepare the cervix. And I'll give you a classic example. This is a real case. A lady came to the hospital at 27 weeks of pregnancy with severe toxemia. Her blood pressure, a normal blood pressure is about 120 over 80. Her blood pressure was 220 over 160. Okay, this lady would literally be minutes or hours away from a stroke. What do you do in a situation like that? We stabilized her, brought her back, did a cesarean section, had her delivered within an hour of arriving at the hospital. She and her baby did just fine.
So, there's nothing I personally can add to that, Stella. I find his testimony extremely compelling. What do you think of it?
Well, I don't think funny is a word, but it's funny because I just came out from an emergency C-section today.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because that 14-year-old didn't tell her family that she was pregnant. Basically came to the ER and said, we came here because my belly keeps getting bigger. Took a pregnancy test, and her blood pressures were through the roof, just like the doctor was on the recording. Mm-hmm. And so basically we had to do an emergency C-section because her blood pressures were high, and she was pretty close to stroking out too. Mm-hmm. And baby made it out alive. Mom's blood pressures are a lot better now that the baby's delivered. Baby ended up going to the NICU, but I'm pretty sure baby's going to do well eventually. And I don't know, all of his points are valid. And as a Catholic, I really do want to be a believer of abortion. But I guess I'm just playing like devil's advocate for myself. What do you call it? Strong man? What's it called? The opposite of straw man. Steel man. I think that's what they say. So I'm just trying to, preparing myself just in case somebody else in the future says, well, why can't we make abortion exceptions for these cases? I want to have, a really good answer for them. So I guess...
Well, let me use a parallel, if I may, Stella. Can you think of an exception? Well, let me ask you the question first. Do you believe that slavery is okay? Let's say white people owning black people.
No.
Okay. So let's think about that together. So can you think of a situation where we could bend that rule and say, well, under these circumstances, and only these, it is okay for a white person to own a black person as a slave?
I don't think there's any exception for anybody owning anybody.
I agree. So which is worse, to enslave somebody or to kill that person?
I think they're just equally evil, I guess.
Okay, I could see that point. Personally, I would say that if enslaving you would be terrible, but killing you would be even more terrible, the way I look at it.
Right.
So if there's no exception, and you're right, there should be no exception under any circumstances where we would say, but in this case, we'll allow a white person to own a black person. I totally agree with you. All the more reason I would
Okay.
say that there should be never a reason where we would say, well, in this case, we're going to kill an innocent person.
Yeah. I think, yeah, as terrible as these girls' situations are, I feel like it's a blessing for me to have come across and to be have able to take care of them, because back when I was in high school and college, every time I had an ethical paper to write, I would always write about physician-assisted suicide and like abortion and talk about why they should be allowed. And last semester, I had an opportunity. I was attending a Christian school for my last degree, and I had an opportunity to write a new ethical paper, and I wanted to challenge myself to take the other side. And so I decided to take a stance on my paper saying abortion is wrong. And that's when I finally understood that life happens at conception, not like 6 weeks, not 8 weeks, but at conception. So I finally get that. And so being able to take care of these patients in the past 2 weeks, I think I'm finally going towards the point where I'm starting to think, hey, I guess there's no exception for abortion at all. And your recording of that doctor talking about super dangerous cases starting at 24, 26, 20 weeks, that's true. Yeah, I can see that. And at that point, it's not like a thumb-sized baby anymore, you know? It's a baby. I guess you get what I mean.
I
So
do.
I will try to bring up these points next time somebody brings up making exceptions. I don't know how firmly I can stand because I don't know if I can say all of this in my own words yet, but hearing it through someone else, yeah, it makes sense to never make an exception.
I can imagine, Stella, that the line of work that you're in, you probably are surrounded by a lot of people who just don't get it, and they do think that abortion is okay, and they really probably don't give it much of a thought. So if I had to guess, I can imagine it's probably daunting for you to have to speak the truth, but you can do it. Remember David and Goliath, the story from the Old Testament, where this gigantic warrior from the Philistines, towering above everybody, and who comes up to fight him but this 16-year-old kid who's got nothing but a slingshot? And he wins because he stands up even against what seemed like just impossible odds, and he stood up against it, and he won. So I'm not suggesting, obviously, that you do anything violent, obviously not. But don't be afraid of them. Don't be afraid of their pseudo-arguments. Don't be afraid of their bullying. Don't be afraid of those things, because you have the truth on your side. And those little babies and their moms, without knowing it, they're depending upon you and other people like you in these situations to stand up and speak the truth.
Okay, I have a follow-up question then.
Sure.
If I'm ever taking care of a patient where, okay, so I don't think we deal with abortions. Maybe the ED downstairs does it, but if I ever had to take care of like the consequences, like someone's hemorrhaging because of a failed abortion or something, and if I take that assignment, as nurses, we do have the right to say, this goes against my moral belief and I don't want to take this assignment.
Right.
But if I do take that assignment and it's related to an abortion, would I be, committing a sin?
No, you're not. Let me put it this way. Let's say that there was a bank robbery, and the bank robber got shot in the process of doing the bank robbery, so he's committing a serious crime. He gets injured in the process. They bring him to the hospital, and you try to help him, stop the bleeding and help him survive. You're not doing anything wrong because you didn't participate in the bank robbery. Your job is to help restore the health of the person in this situation, even though what he was doing an hour earlier was evil. So in the case of a patient who's hemorrhaging and you're taking care of her to save her life, you're not committing a sin because you didn't participate in what actually was a sin, which was the abortion.
Okay. I guess I just have to work on putting all of this into my own words for the future.
Yeah, let me give you some suggestions. I recommend a Live Action. So liveaction.org is the website. And they have a lot of resources that can help you. I also recommend, you'll love this, it's called Virtue Media. And virtuemedia.org has many, many video clips, and they're almost all very short. Some of them are actually TV commercials. And they will help you understand the language that you can use to be persuasive and for people to get past their slogans and past their thought-stopping ideas and help them see from the heart, what is wrong with this situation. So virtuemedia.org, look at their videos. Those would be two things I think you could find very helpful that will help you. And I'm always here for you too. So feel free to call anytime. And there's a good book that I recommend to you and to anyone who's in the medical profession. And it's called Life Issues, Medical Choices. And it's a very good kind of soup to nuts book that looks at bioethical issues in the medical field. And this is one of those topics that they cover. It's very readable, very accessible, and it'll speak to you because it's dealing with your profession and how you, as a believer in Jesus, can bring the truth into these situations in a very effective way. So check that out too.
Since I'm already here talking to you, do you have a quick rebuttal to somebody who says it should be my choice, women's rights, it's my body? Like, what do I...
Yeah, my body, my choice.
It's just not a good time for me. I don't have the money for it, things like that.
Right. Yeah, and I've heard all those. And my heart goes out to women who are in that situation. I mean, I don't wish any harm to them. I have compassion for them, and I only want to see them be happy. But taking the life of your unborn child is not the answer to that question. It just will compound the problem further. You can ask them this question. Just say, how do you feel about vaccines? Should people get vaccinated? And let's say she says, oh yeah, everyone should be vaccinated. And say, well, what about those people who don't want to be vaccinated? Well, it doesn't matter. They should be vaccinated. So the whole my body, my choice argument that's used, that you're bringing up, turn it around and use it in the form of the vaccine and see what that person says. Because what might happen and what probably will happen is that she will abandon the my body, my choice argument when it comes to vaccines, but she'll insist upon it when it comes to abortions. And the thing is that it's always, in both scenarios, another person's body that gets hurt. So in the case of an abortion, it's not your body that's getting hurt. In fact, that baby inside you, you could say, has a separate DNA, a separate heartbeat. I mean, it's not like your kidney. It's separate from you. That's another human being. And when you say my body, my choice, what you're really saying is I have a choice to kill an innocent person. And yet, more often than not, the same people who insist on that will reject that when it comes to the issue of vaccines. Sorry, you have to get the vaccine, they'll say, because other people's lives are at stake. Well, wait a minute. I thought that's what that you really didn't care about when it came to abortion. So why is it important to look out for other people's lives when it comes to a vaccine, but it's not important to look out for someone else's life when it comes to an abortion? You see, you can ask questions like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes total sense. It took me a second to get what you were saying about the separate DNA, but you're saying that that's a whole separate person. That's not for you to take their life. Okay, I get it.
Right. So that little unborn baby has a separate DNA from his mother, and he has a separate heartbeat, and all the systems in the body are all separate from hers. He or she is in her and being nourished by her, but that's a separate person. Isn't it beautiful? Thanks, Stella. I'm glad you called me. Let's go to Patty in Norwalk, California. Good morning, Patty, and welcome.
Hi, good morning, Patrick. So good to talk to you.
Thank you. You too.
So, Patrick, I just wanted to comment on your conversation with the last caller, the nurse that asked you, her final question was about a rebuttal to those people that would say, or those women that found themselves pregnant and unplanned. And when they say, well, I don't have any money and it's just going to be too expensive and all these excuses and all these things. And wanted to share my personal experience. I was 17 when I had my first child. I was living at home. My own mom, she was pressuring me to get an abortion. I was pretty much at the mercy of the world. And I had a religious upbringing, grew up Catholic, but not really understanding my faith. And I really think that it was the Holy Spirit that was telling me, you have to stand up, even against your mom. And I was afraid of my mom. Like, everything she said, I had to do. But I stood up to her and I said, no, I'm not going to do this. And I don't care
Good for
what you do
you.
to me. I'm not going to do this. So here I am, and my son is almost 30 years old. He's married. He has a beautiful Catholic wife, and now they're expecting their first baby.
Awesome.
And I just feel so blessed. I just want to tell all the women that find themselves in this situation just to have faith in God. He will slowly work his way into your heart, and he will open doors that you never thought were there. And that's what he did for me. And I'm just feel so blessed. And
Yes.
I'm hoping to, meet my grandbaby and just watch my son be a wonderful father and my daughter-in-law a wonderful
That's so
mother and
beautiful.
wife.
That's so beautiful, Patty. Is your mother still alive?
Yes, and thankfully, many years later, actually not too long ago, the conversation came up about abortion. And I said, it's really hard when people just say it so easily. Just get an abortion. Well, just get an abortion. And she looked at me and she started crying. And she's like, I'm so sorry. She goes, I know I did that to you. She goes, and I'm so sorry. And we hugged, and so I'm just thankful
That's
that
good.
she came around and she apologized to me. I never really asked. I'm pretty sure she went to confession and she,
Good.
got that out. But anyway, it hasn't been. I'm not saying that it's an easy road, by no means. But you can't lose hope, and you just have to take it one day at a time, and stay close to God and the Blessed Mother, and wonderful things will happen. And
So
I'm
true.
a testament to that.
That is so true, Pat. Well, one thing I'm so happy to hear is that you had that reconciliation with your mother over this. That must have been very healing for both of you. Sounds like it was.
Yes, it was.
Does your son know the backstory? Does he know that your mom tried to pressure you into having an abortion, or have you kept that from him?
He knows. Yes, he knows my story. I'm not afraid. I'm not ashamed to tell anybody my story, because it's important. It's important for them to realize how precious life is, and what would life be without my children? I have 4. I have one in heaven because I lost one, but I just can't imagine my life without them. And every single one of them is a gift from God. And we weren't always in the best situation financially to have children, but when you welcome a baby into your life, God will open unbelievable doors. I wasn't
So
supposed to make it this far. I grew up very poor. I just can't even believe the blessings. It's just unbelievable. So
God will not be outdone in generosity.
amazing.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
Just as a quick aside, Patty, I feel a special, I don't know, kind of affinity with you because you live in Norwalk, and my mom and dad both grew up in Norwalk. And if you know
wow, that's amazing.
if you know where Tina Street is in Norwalk,
Yes.
So that was my mom's and dad's neighborhood, and they met there when my mom was probably about 13 years old when they met. And they got married at
that's
St. Pius
amazing.
X parish just down the street from where you are on Pioneer Boulevard.
Oh my goodness, St. Pius. That's our parish.
That's your parish? My mom and dad got married there, and I came along not too much longer after that. So I really kind of got my start in your neighborhood.
Wow, that makes me so happy to hear that. And my son got married at St. Pius, by the way.
Ah, that's beautiful. Well, I only say it because this is all about you. It's not about me, but that's why I feel a kind of special connection with you for that reason. But I'm so happy you called. Many people are benefiting from hearing what you're saying. In fact, we're going to turn this call into a social media clip so we can help many more people on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. So thank you for being courageous. Thank you for doing the right thing. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you. And
You're
if I
welcome.
can ask for prayers for my son and my daughter-in-law and their baby.
Yes.
They're very early on in their pregnancy, but I just ask for prayers, please, because they did lose their first baby by miscarriage. So they're a little bit nervous.
Okay. Yes, we certainly will pray. Prayers are going up right now for them. And as an aside, you might want to encourage them to get in touch with the John Paul II Life Center in Austin, Texas. They have a staff of physicians and other dedicated professionals who help women who have problems either conceiving or who have problems keeping babies till term. Sometimes they lose them in miscarriage. And so they have some really helpful ways of overcoming those problems. And they're at the ready for couples just like your son and daughter-in-law. So they may want to get in touch with them to see if there's anything, just to make sure that she's in the perfect position to have the baby go to term.
Great. Thank you so much. I'll let them know.
Okay, very good. Patty, excellent conversation with you. You really added a great deal to the show today. Thank you for that. And God bless you.
For more of The Patrick Madrid Show, visit relevantradio.com/Patrick.